The idea that we had with Homo Sound was to allow people to share their knowledge, their experiences with other people who are interested in the music scene. For two reasons. One is to get to know them better as people, and the other reason is to help the community, to help people who are in the music industry, who are promoters, who are artists, record label owners, to help them with tips, knowledge, inspiration as well. We figured out a few months ago that when we joined forces with Burden, Tapefeed, Flaminia, it was much better for all of us because we helped each other, we supported each other, we learned from each other's mistakes. And we thought, why don't we ask the same questions to people who are 10 years, 5 years ahead of us, so that can help also the broader community. We really think that when you share something with other people, it helps people like connect with you on a personal level, but also it helps people save time from mistakes, learn from things that should not happen, and then it makes the scene much better because people learn, they improve, your environment improves, and you improve as well when you share. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the four guests. We have Daniel Avery, who is a DJ, producer. He's been releasing music for quite a lot of years now. He's been traveling for around the world. He has a lot of gigs in UK, Europe, around the world. And he's here tonight as an artist to tell us a bit more about what's happening in his life and his music. We have Andy from Fabric. And Andy has been he's been a promoter, a booker for almost 20 years, 15, quite a long time. Before he was the programmer, head of promotion at Ministry of Sound until 2010, and then he went to Fabric, where he leads the promotion for the Saturday night at Fabric. Then we have Jorge, who is another booker, promoter for Village Underground and Hearth, and he's been in the music industry for almost 20 years. Before that, he was working with Telebus. He did a lot of work for the music industry, and now he's running two of the most important places in London for electronic music. And we have Bianca, who is an artist manager, who is new to the panel, and is here to share her experience about what goes on in the music industry, what are important things for artists, what are important things for the music industry, also not to burn out. Since it's the week of ADE, the week after ADE, I think that one of the questions that came up a lot in your questions is actually how to keep a balance in your lifestyle. So how, when you work, you play a lot, you stay up for long, you stay up for days, for night. How do you keep a balance with the rest of your life, which is health and relationships? Daniel, do you want to take this question?
I guess so, yeah. All I can say is that I just try and have a very normal life midweek, like very, very normal, and go to bed very early and get up at a normal time and have a very fixed routine. I try and do that. I can't promise I do that every time, but that's what I try and do. And so the weekends are weird and strange, and you can't really rely on timings there. But in my midweek life, I can rely on timings. That's all I can say, really.
Yeah. And do you have time for other things outside of music and resting?
I try to make it, yeah. I try and do as much non-music stuff as possible midweek, actually. Yeah, other than the studio when I'm in there. I try and just do stuff other than that, you know.
That keeps the balance with the
I
weekends.
think it's important. I still haven't found this balance, by the way, and it's almost impossible to find the perfect one. I'm sure these guys will agree. I'm still searching for that balance, but
yeah,
it's getting better every year, just a little bit, yeah.
Hopefully it's going to get to an acceptable point. And thank you, Daniel. And Andy, do you want to say something about that?
A bit like Daniel, I'm still searching for it. I would argue my life's a contradiction. I like my sport as well as my music. So Monday to Thursday, I'm quite healthy. And then Friday to Saturday, as Daniel says, the weekends take over. But I would say with what I've done for, I guess actually about 17 years of working pretty much 80% of every single weekend of my life, you do find your own equilibrium, but that equilibrium doesn't match anyone else. So you can have really lonely moments. Your days off are no one else's days off. Your busy times when you actually want to be left alone sometimes, you've got everyone else wanting to be centre of attention. So it is a very awkward balance you have to try and find. And I would say I should say rock, or the person is, I've been with the same girlfriend for 12 years, and she understands me, and that is the bit that she lets me be me, but is always there. But to say I found the right balance is wrong. I have ups and downs and rocky roads, and if it wasn't something I loved, I would have given it up ages ago. And it's important you do try and get moments to yourself, and it's hard.
Is your girlfriend in the music industry as well?
No, totally. She likes to go out and party. She's in media, food, and fashion PR. But my holy day is my Monday, and she goes to work. You know, so it's hard. And on Sunday, she wants to do something. I'm in bed. She goes, let's go for a roast dinner. And I'm like, oh no, let's stay in bed. So there is all this, there is all this balance to find. And I think I'm lucky that I've got someone who has the patience for me. But I do have inner, what do you call it? I say turmoils at times of pressure, and knowing that you've got to be up and be, you know, snappy on a weekend when sometimes you don't want to be. So like Daniel, I haven't found a balance, but it's when you feel it, take a break is all I can say.
Yeah, very important. Yeah. Thanks, Andy. Bianca, do you want to take the same question?
Well, I actually didn't go to ADE this year.
That's the balance you need, actually.
My first one I missed in 5 years, I think. But that's a lesson too, you know, like you don't have to be at everything. I think a lot of the time, for industry anyway, there's a lot of like, you have to be everywhere and be at everything. Show face, you know. Someone will be like, oh, you're coming on Saturday, and it's like, I don't feel well. You should show face. And your boss says that to you, or like your colleague says that to you. So you're like, I have to show face. And then you turn up and everyone's in a certain mood, and maybe you get swept up. I think it's just fine to say no sometimes. And then, you know, I think with actual burnout, which is something a lot of my industry friends will say to me, like, I think I'm burning out. And I feel like the minute you think you're burning out, you need to address that immediately, because I've had actual burnout. I worked with a really high-profile techno artist for 2 years. I worked on 2 time zones, so European time zone living in Berlin, and then with someone in LA. So I did like the full stretch for 2 whole years. And by the time I left, I left for my health. And by the time I got to that point, I thought, I'll rest for a week and everything will be fine. And that is not how it works with burnout. 8 months later, I was still seeing my laptop as like an enemy. And like, it's just not something that disintegrates overnight. So if you're in the pub saying, I think I'm burning out, I'm just going to get through this next project or this next event or this next artist campaign release, whatever, just consider if maybe, you know, if it's not possible to stop what you're doing, because I think what we do is you can't always just stop something in the middle of a project. You know, you're committed to things. It's like life, it's not work. But you can potentially talk to everyone that you're working with, tell them how you're feeling, and maybe you can strip back, hire some help, do something. I mean, every situation is different. I don't know what people can do, but just like don't ignore that feeling, because it doesn't take a weekend to recover from burnout.
It sounds like, I mean, if the whole industry is out, then you fear that you're going to be missing out if you're not there all the time.
But it's also like the thing is that when you start in this industry, something that you absolutely love 100%, you know. So the lines between work and fun and play that everyone has are completely blurred, you know. So you're in the club, are you having fun, or are you looking at the DJs that you booked, or are you actually working, you know? And it starts getting really, really blurred at some point. And for me, I still, of course, haven't found the balance, you know. But I had to strip back. And a couple of months ago, I told my friend that she was doing a birthday away. And I was like, I can't go to your birthday because I have Helen and a half playing at Village Underground. And as soon as I said it, I was like, what am I saying, you know? So I'm trying to make a conscious effort of like getting back my weekends, seeing my friends that are my actual friends. And it's not easy, but at some point you start realizing, like, if I'm not there, it's okay, you know? I have someone else taking care of the job. But it's hard for me to get to that point, to detach yourself from that, because I'm missing out. Maybe the artist is there, maybe the agent is there, maybe I would have fixed this and someone else didn't fix it. You know, it's hard to strike that balance for me, you know, still.
Yeah, I think in addition to what you just said, that the difference, something that's kind of unique about this clubbing world is that it happens every week. Clubs open every weekend. Whereas, like, you know, if you're in a band, you might release an album and go on tour for 1.5 years, and then you have some time off. But with DJs and club promoters and managers, it's every weekend, and the opportunity is always there to go out, take another show, take another gig, you know, go to another party. But it is okay to not go to every single one.
And it also normalizes a lot of like bad behaviors, you know. You're around people that are always partying, a lot of like have really difficult. They all party every weekend. They fly everywhere. It looks very glamorous at the end of the day. And sometimes I've found, like, when I go back home and I talk to people that I work with that studied with me or whatever, and I start blurting my mouth about what my weekend is or what my lifestyle is, and they're like in shock, because it normalizes a little, like, after parties and flying in and doing this, etc., and doing 3 shows in a weekend, etc. So when that becomes normalized, it becomes a problem because you don't see the red signs coming up from side to side,
Until it's too late, probably.
Yeah. I mean, I think another thing is how you do it when you are there in terms of, like, drink and alcohol. It's confusing, isn't it? Because you start this because you probably fell in love with music on a dance floor at some point, partying, which is fine because it was probably the time you partied that month, and that's cool. And then suddenly it's your job and you're there every weekend, and nobody really tells you that you're supposed to find a different way to be at that party so that you're not part of the crowd necessarily. I mean, I've mastered I started the touring naps. Like, I was like, what do you mean? When someone was like, why don't you nap if the set time is 4 till 6 a.m.? I was like, that's weird, but I did it and it worked. And then coffee on the dance floor. Like, you don't have to be at the party if you're working, and that's hard for young people to know when it gets to that point.
When you're hosting, as me and Jorge do, you have friends that come down. Like, the Fabric's birthday last weekend. You've got people coming down. You're like, yeah, let's get a drink because you're hosting, and you've got to. We feel the pressure to sort of transition the vibe. If you're yawning, I've been at times,
and it's like the 20th time you've seen it. Like, you're like, oh, yeah, okay.
You're scared.
And I've been yawning at the back of a DJ booth before at 5 o'clock, and the DJ looks around to me and goes, "Is everything all right?" And he says, "No, I'm just really fucking tired." You know what I mean? I'm sure Daniel can get it. And also for a DJ, if you're not feeling it, to be the centre of attention, whereas everyone else in their work can hide a bad day in the office, you sort of slump behind your computer, you push a few emails around, you don't do anything. You can't hide having a bad day in a nightclub if you're in the positions that yourself and I think we're are. You've got to be yeah. And you're lying to yourself at times, if I'm being totally honest with you. And that's when you say walk away. And I think when you say to a DJ, I wasn't feeling it, they understand, but the people around don't.
Yeah. Also, like, what other job does your employer try and get you drunk?
There is a lot of social pressure that comes in when you're there in the club, and then everybody's drinking around you, everybody's offering you drinks. It's very hard to say no.
And I think you have to find that way of feeling confident enough to say, I'm not drinking tonight. They make it hard for you, though. I know Luciano was talking really openly about his sobriety, and he was saying that it was easy for him before he went back on the road, but then as soon as he went back on the road, he has the same thing where he's in the booth, and something that he would always do was like shots with everyone that was in the booth, the promoter, the other artists, and it was like this ceremony. And if he wasn't taking that ceremony, leading this moment of, then he wasn't fun that night. But then he started putting on his rider fresh ginger juice, and he started doing ginger shots with everyone in the room. Maybe we should get some ginger shots up in your gaffs. You can do it with like cacao, cayenne. You can get a bit of a natural high.
The problem is that it is fun, when you're doing it, it is fun, Like when you're doing it and you're hosting and the DJ shows up and you're with the manager and you go for dinner, and it is fun, and you get wrapped up into that, but then you have to pay the consequences over and over again. Yeah. And at some point it starts getting very tiring,
Mm-hmm. You need to draw a line at some point. Yeah. Moving on to another question that comes from the audience. This is about artists trying to be noticed by promoters, by trying to be noticed by record labels. And I'm going to ask the question first to Daniel. What are the strategies that work the best for a new artist to actually get their music signed by a label, or for promoters to find the artist's music?
That's a big question. Personally, the thing that's worked for me, this is all I can really speak about, is releasing music. And the biggest turning point for me was when I released my first album, Drone Logic, in 2013. That changed everything for me, because all of a sudden I had a calling card. I had my own business card that was fully my own, and I'd worked so hard on that record, and it was exactly what I wanted to say. And it wasn't about social media posts, and it wasn't about hype or anything, because no one knew who I was at that point. I was just able to make something, and then from that point on, everything changed. If you can just make an honest artistic expression, that's going to last, and that can be your calling card. That's my opinion. It doesn't work the same for everyone, but if I would personally put all your effort into that. That's how I feel.
I know it wasn't on your own label, so you released on another label.
Yeah. I released on Fantasy, and I built up a connection with Errol Alcan over many years, and we became friends over that time, and it just felt like a very natural fit. I think this might be another question later, but I think those personal connections are the ones that make the difference. You know, I became friends with the guys from Fabric, and started playing there, and then I released a Fabric Live CD, and it was all personal connections, and it wasn't about just, I don't know, sending demos off or hype. It was a personal connections and meeting people and going to clubs, and that's really, I've always felt that to be the most important.
So music is the most important thing, and putting the music out there. And
I think so. Personally, I think so, yeah.
And then relationships help you, because basically you are visible to people who have labels, who are bookers.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just going to back Daniel up. It's like Daniel came through Fabric through his relationship with Sean, who's here somewhere, and then he kind of grew into Saturdays as his sound developed, and then me and Judy, and we all have a connection. And I do believe that in this industry, or especially electronic music, it is about connections with each other as much as it is about your music, and obviously quality shines through. But just to say the same, the 5 residents me and Judy have taken on in Saturdays have been people who have been in and around that club for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So they're not nobodies to us. And we'll come down and listen to Anna Wall at Lion and Lamb, or Klaus, who's been playing for us for 10 years. And I'm not telling everyone to go out to parties and make yourself known. But if you're in the scene and you're being genuine comes through. You know, we get sent loads of demos, and be totally honest with you, you don't listen to it. But if you're a friend with Daniel, and Daniel goes, Andy, listen to this, check this out. Or I go, Jorge, check this person out. You sort of listen to your other peers. And so you do have to make those connections and make yourself known to people. It's not just about sending cold demos out. You know what I mean? You do have to be part of what you want to be part of at the same time.
And just to jump into that, I don't know where I met Daniel, but I ran into him in Underworld, and we took the tube back to Village Underground, and we started chatting about the all-nighters, etc. And then after that, the idea became to do the all-nighter, and Daniel's idea was to do it like cheap on £10 and get it on, or get it together and get people early. So Daniel decided to create a little LP that we printed for the first 100 people, but it was because we've been hanging out at the club through Dog, etc. So
yeah, that never would have happened, I don't think, through emails or just...
No.
It doesn't work the same way. Yeah.
It's nice to try approaching promoters a little bit differently. I used to book an event called Night Tales, and there was this boy that turned up one night. So we were like it was like a festival in a car park kind of thing, and it was all unannounced lineups. We'd have like Groove Armada, Maya Jane Coles, whatever. I paid them 500 quid. It was all unannounced. It was like, and sometimes I would have someone warm up, but I only ever had 100 quid for it. And this boy turned up one night. So many people would ask me to do that slot, of course, because they were playing before someone huge. They'd never get that booking in a club. But it was hard for me to filter. And this guy just came, and he had a DJ CV, and he'd printed it out, and it was like a CV, but it was all the places that he'd played, and it had links to stuff and images and everything. And I was just like, I went home, I listened to it to check it wasn't, ridiculous. But it wasn't ridiculous, and I was like, you know what, fine, have a slot. And he was great. Played this really cool like Afrobeat kind of thing, and then I ended up booking him a few times, and I think he still plays now. Yeah, it's just doing something. It was the way he looked in my eyes, It's true. It's like the personal touch, something different, be unique and like special, and then people can read that from you.
And it was still personal. So it's still like this is a scene, an industry where human relationships matter the most. Like in the end, you are dealing with people.
Yeah, more than anything else, to be honest. I think like more than anything else, and one of the important things that, for example, AD is great because you do the meetings with the agents, etc. But I was thinking like a lot of the big chat happens in backstages, So you're backstage in this thing, and then someone from this agency goes like, "Oh, this kid, he did an amazing set at this place," and then I tell Andy, and Andy tells this, and then we're all seeing it bubble, And at the end of the day, it's like it's a lot of gossip going around, Sometimes it's at the right place at the right time, Some person released the right record at the right time, but there's a lot of like bubbling under the surface and a lot of backstage talk and industry, and that happens like putting in a lot of work. Also having a lot of like people backing you and friends and a community behind you helps a lot, because at the end of the day, you can think that you're great because you released a record in Compact or whatever, or any big label, but if you don't have people buying tickets, then it's worth nothing. Your agent might think you're worth £1,000, but if 100 people don't come to see you at £10, it doesn't really work,
Yeah.
So
again, I think just to add to that, this sounds like a stupid point, but I do mean it, is don't be a dick. Is that
don't be a dick.
You can release a record that everyone plays, and I've seen it happen. I'm sure we've all seen it happen. You can release a record, and then all of a sudden you think you're the man or woman, and And I've just seen people be dicks to promoters just because they just expect it. But
so I'm going to back you up there. I've seen people being £500 DJs in room 3, and they've made their break, and then they get big and they start being divas. And this is why I love Judy, who works with us, and she's been at the club for 20 years. She's been there from before them, and she just checks them straight away, and they go, "Whoa, sorry, you do need to never get above your station, or whatever you do. Be humble to what you are and who you're working with."
Because on the other side, you always have people. So if you treat them in a bad way, like they're not gonna react well.
Yeah, there might be a moment where you need them again as well. You know, I've seen that a few times. Someone gets to the top, everyone wants them, they turn into a dick. And then they go on the down, and then they need the shows, they need the signings, and they don't get them.
There's that saying, isn't there? Never be mean on the way up, because you never know who you're going to meet on the way down.
Exactly.
So this is a question for the promoters. How do you make sure you stay relevant over the years when music trends change all the time? How do you make sure there is a... I think it goes back to
I
community.
think it's hard by the looks of it.
It's very hard, and I think it's got harder because I think what we've got now is this big show mentality, which is relevant music. I'm not knocking it, but this big show hype that places like us and Village Underground just can't keep up with.
can you explain what big show mentality means?
To me, the 90-minute set culture, 5 or 6 stacked headliners, great production, great shows, not club. For me, not what club culture is. Club culture is what we do, and there's no disguising the fact that since this happened in the last 3-4 years in the UK, our best-selling shows at Fabric, and I'm sure it might be the same for Jorge, have been our all-night longs. So Daniel for 2 hours means, I shouldn't say means nothing for us, it sells, but Daniel all night, Daniel all night long, it's like boom in a nightclub. But Daniel Printworks with all this other stuff around him, it's the differentiation, the difference between what we do. And I think clubs had to re-identify with that a lot in the last few years. But to run a 52-week-a-year venue, we try and stay as relevant and as forward-thinking as we can. But you do have to have that balance of underground and cool and things that are actually paying the bills, and it's a difficult balance to make.
It's so ever changing, you know, since sort of like this big club mentality started with that reaction was to try like, okay, we can't. It also, first of all, it killed the mid-range DJ, you know, because I still need the headliners to sell the tickets, but I used to fly someone for £800, £700 and pay their flight, the hotel, etc. That had to go down, you know, kill it completely because it was costing too much money. I'd rather extend it, the other DJ, do an all-nighter set, because if you want to go to Printworks for like a factory kind of thing and see like 20 DJs for like £40, then we're just going to give you an all-night with the DJ, and that was our reaction to it, you know. But it's really hard to keep up because we started losing, like, let's say at some point you had like a circuit of clubs, like you did Fabric, you did Village Underground with your label, etc. And then sort of like those artists started getting really big offers from big sort of like clubs, festivals, etc. That our festivals are creeping into May, so that they have an exclusivity of 2 months. So it starts getting very complicated between like you don't have the circuit of the clubs anymore. They have to do the big shows, etc. And there's money that you can't compete. So then what do? You try to hold on to some headliners or try to bet on up-and-coming artists. That sometimes works, sometimes don't work, you know. But those are the bets you take. But for that is what Andy says. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a lot of the stuff that you wouldn't do before, and then go with like super commercial stuff to pay the bills, because at the end of the day, the other stuff doesn't work. So it's a constant exercise of looking what's coming, what's hot, who's the next thing. If I can get there earlier, maybe I can do an interesting sellout show for an up-and-coming artist at a lower price, you know. But it's a constant exercise, and it's very draining, and it's very tiring, to be honest. I don't know what you think.
I agree with you. I think picking you up here a little bit is your relationships with people, as I think luckily Fabric's relationship with people over the years is we have people like Daniel, Ben Clock and all that who we've picked up from, I shouldn't say when they were nobodies, but when they were small DJs. They've been playing for us for 11, 12 years. And so when you ask them, they always give you a fair rate and a fair fee. But some of the, I shouldn't say newer, some of the other ones that we haven't identified early enough, the fees that they ask for just don't compute. And that, I think, is the trouble with a 52-week-a-year venue. You can probably do 50%, 30 shows a year for love and what you do, and the others you are balancing books, sadly, these days, because the economics of the business have got a lot harder than they used to be.
And you're having artists skipping the club, sort of like don't know, back in the day, I think you had to open, you had to like be mid-range DJ, and then suddenly you have a massive record, you become big, but that takes a lot of time, you know? So now you have artists that you heard about them 6 months, etc., and they skip the club thing and they just go to the big like 1,000 plus or 2,000 plus, so like stages, and they skipped that sort of like club thing, which is something that we're talking about on the way down. Some of these big acts that have been doing festival stages for many years, you try to bring them back into the club, and they actually are not worth any tickets, you know, because they've been part of like this sort of like crazy world where they're part of a ticket festival. But when you bring them to reality, to the actual fans, to 700 people, which is not a lot of people to buy their tickets, and they bring headlining festivals, they don't sell it, and they wonder why, you know.
Yeah, but there's a comment. It's on the other way on, a trajectory up, that we've had an artist once and they sold out really, really quickly, and then I went back again for the next year, and I don't like to overdo things, and it actually was one of the most draining comments I've heard was, Andy, we're too big for Fabric now. And it's like, that would never have been said 3 years ago. Never have been said. We're 1,500 people. The standard show now is 3,000 to 5,000 people, as you'll probably be finding. But also, when an artist does play a smaller room like us, the sound and the experience you get is so much different to a big room. Do you feel that, though?
Of course, 100%, yeah.
I mean, it's crazy to think that we are small rooms.
Yeah,
That's crazy. Yeah, to
That
say
is
the Fabric is
absolutely
small rooms.
insane,
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, Fabric Room 1's about 800-900 people, and you're 700 people?
750, you know, that used to be a big room. And it's still difficult to sell that room, you know, at the end of the day, you know. So those big jumps, and then I think we'll be living in a false economy at the end of the day sometimes, because some agents believe that the artists are worth this amount of money. And at some point, you make the numbers, and it just doesn't add up, you know. So I think the club is going through a massive change. I think this reaction of this big club, as anything in life, is going to have a counter reaction, and we have to be really focused on looking at what's happening underground, because those are the people that are really like clubbing. Those are the people that don't feel comfortable in a 3,000 or 1,500 capacity venue in one room, you know. So those are the things that I'm constantly looking for. And it will develop, and we'll have a counter reaction where clubs will come back, but we're just waiting for the time that it comes back, to be honest.
I think it's a real shame that you can't afford to book those kind of warm-up, second, third artists now, and it's got to change, because that's kind of what gives you your identity as a club in the beginning. It's these artists that you book because you think they're wicked, and you know they're going to be amazing when they come to the club, and then the people that come to your club and watch them play have never heard of them. You're maybe part of how you introduce these artists to the city that you're part of.
Well, yeah, I'm going to touch on it, because there's two things here. I've thought about this long and hard, right? And
We discussed it.
if you're an artist, right, or if you're doing any profession in what you do, I will never begrudge you earning the best amount of money you can earn. But in this industry, I think there needs to be a healthy level all the way through. And what we've got at the moment is venues like me and Jorge, we go headliner and up-and-coming talent. The middle tier has gone. And some of the best sets have come from the middle tier DJs, the $2-3 grand DJs. So now what we do is, it's great for some of the younger ones coming through, because I'll go Ben Clark, Jay Clark, and Jay Clark's someone we're backing. If you notice, it would have been Ben Clark, Jay Clark, and someone like Francois X or Anthony Parasol. And each level of this industry needs to be healthy, because how does the lower level, the newcomer make it into the middle tier, then make it out of the middle tier into the upper tier? Because all what's happened is they go up to the middle tier, 2 years forgotten about, next one comes through, and then we've got a really quite saturated upper tier that only a few have made it through recently, and they've blown through and been successes. But I do think there needs to be a consideration from bigger shows and festivals not blocking. I mean, a festival blocks 4 months of exclusivity out. Me at Fabric do not have any impact at what a festival does in terms of ticket sales, so don't block the shows, because then we can't bring things through. Then what talent does the festival have in 5-10 years' time? So it's broken, but it can be fixed.
But also, you have this sort of like mid-tier artists that used to give them a decent fee, etc. And now the agents come, they don't have a reality check, and they go like, well, they got at Printworks this amount of money. Like, what? Like, that is not real, you know? And then sometimes you go back to these agents and the answer is absolutely not. He's not playing for less than 1,500. And then at that point you have to let it go, which in a way is great because we've started digging more into the local people that we have, and pushing that talent through. But at the end of the day, it's a shame because there's a lot of talent that I would like to book, which is at the end the most interesting for me to book because the other ones I know what they're going to play. I've seen them a million times, etc. And that's where you as a booker have some fun, because you go, oh, this could be great with this, etc. That's being gone down, and I think eventually the agents will catch up that oh, why is this artist not playing? Well, because you're asking for this amount of fees, And
Can I say a question? This is a rhetorical question to myself as well. Is it a time to just let go of them and recreate what the clubbing is about? Because that's what half of my brain is saying is, do you know what? Put a line through it. I shouldn't say sod you, but put a line through it. We're going to go back to cheaper tickets and club culture.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking the other day, I was looking at the finances and some of the big acts, they demand so much money that almost either 100% of your ticket sales on a sold-out show and some of your bar goes to that artist. And I'm looking at the bottom number and I go maybe I can just get like mid-range artists that are about to pop, pay them less money, spend less money on the lineup, maybe sell less tickets, and I make the same amount of money at the end of the day. So I think that's what it's going back to. And that's the moment that this sort of agents and artists will understand that maybe selling 500 tickets at Village Underground brings me more money than actually booking Bangkok, So that's what it's going to turn into, and that's why I think it's going to bounce back into a little bit more club culture, etc.
Because it's not sustainable. Long term, this thing is not going to continue. It can't continue.
Look, can I say something about what I got to root for? That will cost venues money to do that, but the long term, it's the only way I can see the long term way out of it, because it's madness that you say that these people like that. We cannot chase the money that other people. We're not 5,000 people and we're not £40 a ticket, so we just can't compete. But the overheads of a business scare you, that you end up in this kind of halfway house of I've got to do one of these to do one I love. It might be 2 years of pain, but you'll be better for it at the end. And I think that's the crossroads that clubs are at the moment, if I'm being totally honest.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see how this is evolving. And the other side of the coin is of course the artists. So the new artists that are actually emerging artists that they cannot get paid because the headliner is essentially consuming all the budget, and it's already hard for the promoter. And Bianca, perhaps, how for an emerging artist who wants to make music their life, they want to give up their day job and actually becoming full-time artists, what are some suggestions?
I mean, it's definitely a transition period for sure. And you're probably going to be very tired during that transition period. So all of the don't lose too much sleep advice from earlier probably counts. I think it's clever to consider some other revenue streams. I run a music conference for young people, and some of them are really great producers and they're trying to release their music on labels and whatever. And that can take a little bit of time for the money to start rolling in. But if they can potentially engineer or some sound design, sell some music to adverts, or just consider even tutoring at Point Blank or something, there are other things that you can do that will also potentially maybe be there at the end of your career, that you can kind of to fill the gap in the meantime while you work on all the things that you probably know how to work on doing.
Yeah, that keeps you going. And Daniel?
Yeah, I totally agree. I would say even just don't make that jump too quickly. I would say just get a part-time job, and I think one of the worst things to do in the early stages is to just be sat by the phone waiting for it to ring, because you can become bitter about the whole thing, particularly when you see people getting paid crazy amounts of money and you're as good as them potentially. So I definitely think that it's just about make sure you have enough to survive, and then keep art your passion for as long as possible, because that's what's going to keep driving you. Because as long as if that's what's driving you rather than the financial gain of it, then you're going to be a better artist at the end of it.
Can I just add an example? I've not been there, but I'm going to use Jay Clark. He was working full time and DJing on the side, and then we started supporting him when Ben Clockworks was doing it. He made the decision to then go wholeheartedly into DJing. And it was probably, as Daniel was saying, it's probably a bit too early. And then luckily his job was he's gone back to doing 3 days a week and DJing on a weekend, because that's the right balance. He can do his job in the 3 days and he gets the Friday and the Monday off to go and tour and do his DJing. And that's helped him balance his lifestyle, because going all into it at once, he was short on his finances. So you just need to be sensible and know what you need to live.
So this is more for artists. How do you find new music, new artists that you then eventually become part of your record collection, or they go into your sets?
I think just how it's always been for me. It's never changed. Go to clubs, go to gigs, go to record shops, spend hours on the internet, talk to your friends, talk to other DJs. I think it's kind of simple, really. It takes a lot of time, though. But that's what I've been doing my entire life as a music fan, and that doesn't change, and it shouldn't change. That's how I feel.
Because then you search more and more artists when you go out, and then you actually start looking for tracks for new artists.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
I'm going to agree. I think it's the same for anyone. I think it's an artist or a promoter or anything. It's like, how do you discover music? You chat to your mates. And the more mates you have doing the same kind of thing, you get more and more into it. It's like, there's times that Jorge says, have you checked this artist out? And it's like, oh, it's amazing. And, you know, so you all get into your scenes, don't you? It's like, you know, you techno and everything. And the more you divulge into that scene, the more you dig and the more you find. And I just think then you develop your taste and then you really know what you like.
And that's what creates hype, you know, because I hear something great and I go to Andy and tell him, and then maybe I run into Dan and go like, have you heard this kid from Amsterdam? And then someone else is telling it, and that creates hype. But to be in that hype, maybe you're lucky, or maybe you have to be in the right circles to push it to the right person, and it just trickles sometimes, you know?
I mean, it helps. I mean, we got a girl, Kimmy, who's phone Nath in the office, and, you know, she's pulling out records that people are giving to her. That, you know, she's lucky. She's opposite me, and I'm like, what's this? What's this? And, you know, when you're there, you just go, oh, and she sends you, I'll send you it. And you're like, okay, cool. And then I'll play something. She goes, what's this?
The agent.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but you know, we all swap music these days, and it's not good for making money out of music, but we're all there swapping it. And I think the more people you meet and the more people you interact with, and the more you open your ears to other things, the more you discover.
It's nice to trust other sources, like other artists and who they're playing, who they're listening to. I miss MySpace for that. We were talking about it earlier. But every artist page, like the big artists, they'd have top friends. And that's how I used to book when I used to do warehouse parties like a million years ago. I would go on the artists that I loved the most, and I would look at their top friends, and it would be younger, smaller, grassroots artists that they were essentially championing. It was like a sort of wall of like, this is who I think the next big artists are. And I would just listen to them, and I'd book who I thought was good. I missed that. What is that? Don't miss much else about MySpace. But I do miss that function.
It's gone, unfortunately. I mean, Bandcamp does a bit of that. Bandcamp does a bit of that when they recommend you with suggestions. So
I think Bandcamp's one of the best things for that, actually, for finding new stuff.
Yeah,
I spend hours on it.
Yeah, because it's accessible to anyone, potentially. You don't need a distributor, you release on that, and then if you buy music from someone, it sometimes recommends other artists that are similar. But then it's an algorithm, it's not personal, like a recommendation in person or a MySpace, how it used to be. This is the question that came up a lot of times from the audience. How important is social media for an artist to promote themselves, to get out there? And how important is social media for promoters when they look at artists and they want to make booking decisions? Daniel?
I feel torn by this, and I don't quite know the answer. And I'm actually really interested to hear what you both have to say about this, because I think that I came about at a time just before social media really was important. I think I was probably the last wave of artists to come through without relying upon it. But saying that, nowadays I do still rely upon it. You know, for instance, I just I'm doing a party in Paris in a couple of weeks. It's very small and much smaller than what I'd usually do, and that was purely announced and promoted on social media. Like, we didn't print one poster, and that's unthinkable. That was unthinkable a few years ago. No flyers, nothing. So I do rely upon it, despite me saying I don't. I do, but I do want to hear what the promoters say about this, because I'm hearing horror stories from promoters and agents about it being based on likes rather than music.
No, right. I'm going to tell you. I mean, I started as a flyer boy, right? I used to dish out hundreds of thousands of flyers and used to drive out around the M25 and used to do all the record shops and everything like that. And so social media, in one sense, is you've saved a load of wasted paper, and to be totally honest with you. But I agree with you, it's a double-edged sword in the sense that I will never, ever book on likes and how many. I had an agent once said to me they should be billed above somebody else because they had more social media likes. I laughed back going, that DJ's been paying for me for 10 years, this is your first time here. And they were like, oh, sorry. But the double-edged sword is, we all need it. And the biggest thing that I can say is, on an announcement, if I've got an artist that doesn't support an announcement on social media, the event is behind the moment you put it on sale.
Right.
If you do a coordinated launch through Daniel's social media, our social media, and someone else, the other artists on it, you get a ramp of tickets and you're ahead the whole way. So social media is important to be engaging our customers and his customers, but it's not what to be booked upon. So it is this kind of contradiction. We all need it. We all kind of don't like it, but it's the way of the world now. But I would book on music and creativity, and talent, not on likes.
Yeah, but it does have an effect, in the amount of reach that the artist has. I'm not saying that's something to be booked at, but for example, I've seen artists that you had on this level, and suddenly they do like not a time warp, but what's the other one? Awakenings, so they suddenly have an awakenings sort of like moment, and as soon as I've seen a couple of artists from lower techno tier levels that they have an awakening sort of like short video, and I've seen the reach that it's got, and I've gone, you're going to be big in 6 months, I better get in touch with your agent. And both times that I've done it, I've been right, because the artist has suddenly that's given them so much weight behind them, and so much sort of like affirmative to a certain type of community. I'm not saying the underground techno scene. I'm saying sort of like the people that buy tickets that are a little bit like on the periphery, is giving them like a stamp of approval. And I've gone and put an offer for the artist, and both of the times it's worked, because Awakenings is sort of like a validation. You see the artist playing, that was an underground artist playing in sort of like, 10, 15,000 people. And I think in those terms, if the artist is smart, they can use that into their advantage a lot,
You're booking on taste with the information of social media. You're not booking on social media first.
No, it's artists that and then you suddenly go you got of course, you got this couple of artists that you see that are bubbling under the surface, but then what gives you confidence is like, okay, this is going to blow up, Which is the same confidence that you have sometimes, and he's going with an agent that you trust or a management that you trust, and you go like, okay, they're going to put in the work that I need for it to be at this point next year,
Because you're booking on engagement over likes, which is more realistic, and it's more clever to do that, because booking on likes doesn't make sense. When I was an agent, other agents used to tell me that my billing wars could be led by who had the more likes and who didn't. But it didn't make sense when I was talking to the promoters, because likes is worldwide, and you're talking to someone in a specific territory, right? So it could be someone huge.
Who was farming likes, and there's 250,000
exactly.
likes
it's not realistic.
From Mexico, and the artist never played in Mexico. But also about likes, I'm going to say this about Fabric. Fabric's been around for 20 years. We've got 500,000 likes. I guarantee you 250,000 of them are 35, 40-year-olds that don't come to the club anymore. So there's all these different ways you can look at it, and I don't think there's a science to it at all.
And we've had this conversation with Andy a couple of times with artists that have similar reach sort of on likes, and Andy's come to me like, what do you think about this artist? Got the same reach of X artist. I don't want to say any names, And I was like, that wouldn't sell. Like exactly the same thing, but they maybe do this kind of thing, and we did put it, and it does the amount of like, it does mean the amount of tickets. Depending on the club, depending on who you're putting it with, it changes completely. So that means absolutely nothing.
Well, I think we've got a lot of artists. I say a lot. There's a certain artists at Fabric. The social media is just irrelevant to them. Radu, Raresh, Pedro, Ricardo, Zip. Put them on, they still sell out.
Yeah, your territory. That's why
there's
your
others
city.
that they do need the support of.
Someone like Ricardo is a great example, because what I would say to new artists or new people in this industry is, don't stress about social media. It is important, but it's not all there is at all. It's far from it. Someone like Ricardo is such a perfect example. He doesn't even bother with it, yet still regarded as one of the best DJs of all time, and will always be remembered that way because of the records he's made and the sets he's played. The records you make, the music you make, everything, that they last forever, those things. A 12-inch is going to last forever. A social media post will be deleted. An Instagram story is going to go in a fucking day. So everything else is actually irrelevant.
Let's say I look at the, 5 different or 7 different possibilities for a support act. And let's say I went and took their social media, and they were all around the same, or one is of 10,000 above. I'm 100% not going to book it because he's got 5K more on social media. I'm going to be like, I'm really good friends with his agent. I've spoken to him last time. He did a great set at that time. Andy, what do you think about this between these two? Oh, I didn't like the set he did last time. You better go with this guy. He's super nice. So it becomes on other completely different factors. That is your social media reach. Definitely it's important you have it, that is tied up, etc., and that you have all the information that someone, when I need to go to pay an artist that I don't know, If you have the agent, I can look at the releases, I can check out the mixes quickly. That's an important tool,
Well,
you know.
I agree with you on that, but I would say as well is hone your sound, hone your skills, because I always get to a point when you get to what is the musical best fit. So you've got your headliner, and so let's say you book Daniel, I book Ben Clock, or you book Ricardo. They're the starting point, and then you book the musical fit from that, because you can have somebody who's better on socials, but if they musically don't fit, it makes the lineup confused. Yeah. So you know, that's how we try and do it.
One last question. So Bianca, one thing you would change in the industry?
I think one issue is that a lot of the kind of leading companies now, like labels, maybe some agencies, lots of them basically, are run, they're independent, so they're kind of run by maybe two guys that got together and set something up, and then suddenly 5 years later they're leading things. But they're not a massive company, which I like, but I think those people need to take a moment to learn how to bring the younger people in their company through the ranks. I think a lot of these kind of self-made bosses, quick-made bosses, can sometimes neglect the fact that maybe they should, have to maybe if an HR was around, what would they say about the way you're treating your staff? And I'm not into HR either, because they say they're not on the boss's side, but they are. So, but just something that, just big bosses, just watch out for the youngers, because they're not finding it easy. You were there once too.
Andy?
So I've done a few of these since closure and reopening and everything like that. The biggest word I can say about Clubland is reset. Everything needs a reset. Ticket prices, DJ fees, artist fees, business class flights. Everything has run away with itself. And we're living in a city that's probably one of the most expensive cities to live in. How much disposable income do people have? And then we wonder why footfall's down. Because we're charging £20 on the door, we're charging £6 a drink, because we have to do this to make ends meet. So it's maybe not just nightlife community, but the whole thing needs just a big reset. I would love to go, do you know what? Everyone's getting paid, boom, 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 and I'm just doing 10s and 15s in. And I would love to know if artists would buy into that. I don't think managers and agents might, but I think artists will, because I've had conversations with artists who go, I'll pay for £2,000 and do £5 all night. Yeah. And you go, lovely. But that's the biggest word for me, is reset. I think we need a reset, because it's run away with itself a little bit. Mm-hmm.
And probably it's because of what we were discussing before about the bigger festivals, the bigger venue, they are pushing the prices up. So artist bills are more expensive.
I think people get used to seeing a figure on their screen, and when it's below that, they think it's below what they're worth. But one of the biggest comments I've had recently, that's my London fee. It used to be, Jorge's smaller than us. He used to pay less than we paid. Now it's I can get X amount there. If you don't pay it, I'll get it there. Right. And I think that kind of attitude needs to change.
Jorge?
Yes, more or less the same, but at the end of the day, that's what all the artists are striving, or most of them are striving for, So they play Village Underground, etc., because they see this big number, So if the big number it's become something that is blurred between the lines of before you had Tiesto and all these artists making X amount of money, and we used to be the punks, the club world. I wish for a little bit more punk lifestyle in this kind of world, because all the punks or the techno kids or etc. suddenly became massive, insane superstars, and it jets and all this stuff, and they jet around the world, So I think I wish for a little bit of that to come back, and if it's not going to come back, for a little bit of understanding from the industry of the different stages that everyone feeds into the machine, and a little bit of respect, at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Daniel?
No, I fully agree. Jorge and I did 2 shows together at Village Underground where I played all night, and I was so keen to make it cheap. The first one was £10, right? £10. Yeah, just £10 for a ticket. It means everyone got paid a bit less, but I like to think that everyone walks away from that night thinking a bit differently about it. But I do totally agree that the rest of the industry, and I also am aware that I'm a huge part of the problem. I'm being hypocritical here because I play for big festivals, But I think the whole thing does need a reset. I think that's a great word for it.
And you were the first artist that we did a split on the door. So that we didn't ask for a fee, and we were like, listen,
that's right,
let's go, let's see what happens, because I don't know I think you were not that confident that we could do it, and I was like, okay, let's do it, but let's do it at £10. and let's just split the fee. You take 50%, we take 50%. It doesn't matter. Let's just make it happen, And it was just a joint effort between both of us, trying to how to get people early, and it was a really interesting thing. And that is very refreshing. And the more you speak to people, the less you see that they expect this amount of things and this amount of treatment. And at the end of the day, like when did DJs that used to be like clubs become superstars and the jets and all this stuff, So I don't mind it because I've worked with artists that are on that level and they sell 12,000 tickets, etc. But there has to be a sort of like a more conscious level in terms of the industry, the management, the artists, etc. of the stages that you go through,
Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's unsustainable. Sorry.
I mean, the fact that you are up for doing that is amazing. So I feel like that's just proof that it's kind of in the artist's hands to have the right mentality and the right attitude towards the industry that they're in, because essentially you are at the top of the chain. So if that's,
Can I say something that might be a bit controversial here? You've got someone like Daniel who probably takes control of his own career. I'm privileged to be in this industry so long that I can call up a lot of artists. What I am shocked about is how if I was an artist, I'd want the agent to tell me exactly what offer it is and let me make my own decision. Is how many agents filter out the lesser offers for more important clubs, more established clubs that don't even make it to the artists. So you can't always blame the artist. And when I call up the artist, I get an agent go, "Why have you called up the artist?" It's like, "I've worked with him for 12 years and want to know why he's turned me down." And then when the artist finds out, the agent's going, "Well, this one was paying more." He goes, "I played for him for 12 years." So there is this filtering process I think needs to be corrected.
If the artists were more involved, then it would be easier,
Yeah, I mean, the artists that know who they want to play for, I think always are in charge of their own careers, and so there is a...
And I think at the end of the day, the artist that just jumps and goes to this massive, and they might be in to cash it in, and they'll cash it in for a couple of years, but if they don't put in the cool clubs, the underground stuff, they're going to easily lose respect. They're going to lose the ear and the contact with the proper artists and the underground culture, and it's just going to become a product and a machine, which is fine at the end of the day. But if you're in it for the love of music, I'm sure that you want to play like a super big festival to make the money, because it's, at the end of the day, it's a job. But you also want to play the underground basement with the right artists, etc.
Connect with people.
And reconnect with people. And I think if that is going to be the longevity for artists at the end of the day,
Yeah. Keep the balance. Yeah. Thank you. Any questions from the audience? You can shout and then I'll
So how long do you think it will take for this current bubble to actually burst? Because obviously everything's going towards the trend of higher fees.
I don't think it's too long. I think people are waking up to it. When I first started out about 17, 18 years ago, I did end up at Ministry, and it was in headline culture. It was Roger Sanchez, it was Pete Tong, it was Eric Murillo. It popped. Seth came through, Martinez Brothers came through. But those people were £500 DJs 17, 18 years ago. They're now the headliners. I do see a kickback in big show culture because it's become the mainstream. And I think footfall and customers is like... People don't want 5,000 capacity. They want the intimate spaces. And I have seen the last 2-3 years have been probably the hardest 2-3 years for Clubland. But what I'm saying is when you've got the right show at the club, you actually win. It doesn't matter that there's Tobacco Dock and Printworks on and they're sold out. We're sold out as well. But the access to talent is the tricky bit. But I do think the customers have... The experience is there on the big show, but the experience of the music and the crate digging is there in the club. So I think the real music fans are going back to clubs, and I call it the Love Island generation Instagram thing. Let's go to the big show and take our photo. To be honest with you, they can stay over there. So I do think there is a divide coming. I'm not saying it's happening now, but I can sense the divide coming because the big shows aren't selling out as quickly as they used to.
Yeah, same like what you were going to say. Like, for example, the Dutch are a great example, You have massive festivals in Amsterdam and all over the place, and they live close by with amazing clubs, I don't think I've ever been in a place that has such amazing like underground scene like Amsterdam or all the Dutch, you know. So I think eventually what you're saying is right. Some people will prefer to go to the club, some people will prefer to go to the underground things. Sometimes when you're with your friends and you want to have a blowout, you go to the big thing, but it's part of an ecosystem. And right now we're like getting in a moment that is breaking up because we were not this machine, this monster of like the big sort of club shows. Not club shows, these big monster shows who didn't exist, and now it's come in, it's taken a big chunk of it. But I think I'm hoping that things will reset themselves, you know, and people will choose what they're more comfortable with, you know. I think just we're not used to it at this moment.
Well, I think it has splintered in the sense of you look at places like Lion and Lamb, you look at the Cause, you look at Fold, there is smaller parties splintering off. So it is happening, and people are going with. Look, I've never been a big room person, and people might think Fabric's big, and I would always prefer a smaller party. But the mass market 7,000 people is not enticing to me, but it's enticing to somebody else. So I think everyone's just going to refine their marketplace.
Adjust, yeah. Great. Any more questions?
Yeah. I remember in like 2008 to 2010, roughly, we had a load of pressure put on the industry because a lot of DJs moved to Berlin. Because it was like cheaper rent, cheaper studios. So therefore the fees became, okay, well, yeah, I'll come and play for you for that, but I need a hotel, and I need a flight on top, and I need a driver from the hotel, and I want dinner. So the guys, you'd book a headline, and then you'd book your London guys to support you, your London girls to support. Instead, you're booking flights and stuff on top. Now, inevitably, unfortunately, we're going to be dropping out of the European Union, and the pound is going to be fucked. What kind of No, I'm serious. Like, that's an incredibly strong financial pressure to put into a really fractured market already. How do you see that playing out? Are you going to have to book UK? Are you going to be Brexit DJ?
Thanks, Sean. He used to work for us. Sean used to do Fabric Life for 18 years or something. It's funny you say that because actually 2-3 years ago we turned around to each other, and I think Fabric was probably the most guilty of this, that we were importing talent to do the 11 till 2 slot, and we were flying DJs in, and then we looked at each other and we're like, what are we doing? There's so much talent on our doorstep. And you've got your Sershas, your Shanties, your Willows, you've got all these people that are there, and we ignored them for too long. And so now we say a rule to ourselves: we do not get any overseas DJs for the first 2 sets. It's always got to be local talent. And I think that is because flights and hotels and everything like that. But to ask what's going to happen after Brexit, I don't even know what's going on with Brexit. So it's a hard one. But I do think the UK went for a fad, well, especially the techno scene, went for a fad of European DJs. And
also all the UK artists left, you know? Like everyone was gone, you know. Like there was a moment that there was a drought completely because all the people that were doing warehouse parties, etc., were just beginning. They didn't have enough hype or profile, etc. And at some point, anyone you wanted to book from London, they all lived in Berlin. Yeah. All of them, 100% of them. So it became really hard. We also started doing.
Did you stop booking them when they moved? Because there was a few that moved, and we were like, "Oh, we've just started booking you."
It doesn't work anymore.
You know, it doesn't financially work.
Because if you think about it, it's like a flight, which is £150 minimum. Pick up from the airport and back is £140 plus the hotels. You're talking about £500 on top of what, and they're not going to go for less than 700 or something like that. So at some point, it's like that doesn't make any sense, you know. Which I think, in a way, is healthy for London and for us to start digging in and looking for local talent, you know,
to the local scene. Yeah, great. So the question is, how do you pick up artists you work with when you curate an event?
Again, it just goes back to this idea of personal connections. Pretty much, the first big curated thing I did was that Fabric night called Divided Love, where we did it 4 times a year. And everyone who played alongside me was someone I'd met on the road, or I'd felt a connection with, or who we had chatted online, or I'd done a remix for them. I just don't think you can ever beat that human connection. That's really the simple answer. There's nothing really beyond that. It's just the people who I felt inspired by, and people who had inspired me on the road or in the studio or whatever. I think it has to have that human connection.
So in a way, similar to running a label when you have actually.
I think so, yeah.
People you know, your friends.
I think so, yeah.
Great.
I'm wondering if, sometimes the event, the venue may have an impact other than like personal connection. If you play in a festival or in a club, like you may not have.
That's interesting because off the back of that, I had a few offers to do like a 10-set festival and curate it. And we looked at the idea of doing it, and they gave me a list of artists who they deemed ticket sellers. And I just thought, well, what's the point of this then? This is just this is like a shopping list of DJs, and like, you know, that's not really curation. That's just me helping you book your 10. That's not curation. I think you have to have that connection. And if you believe in it yourself, then you can't go wrong. You know, even if you sell no tickets, no one can say anything bad about you because you've made an honest statement there, you know.
Great. There was a question there?
Yeah, for Daniel again. How do you know when your productions are done? Because sometimes when I produce, I overdo a bit much and it's not as good.
You don't know is the answer. But I think it is quite important to put some kind of deadline on yourself, and also realize that I think something that the industry has developed, I think it's a bit of an ugly side of it, is this idea of immediacy, and this idea that as an artist you get one go, you put out one track, and if people don't like it, then you're done, which is not true. I can say from experience, and that will never change. If you put something out that you believe in and it's a true statement, then the worst anyone can say about it is that they don't like it. But that's literally as bad as it gets. You know you've made something honest. If you start to think, oh yeah, I've done this track, but it doesn't sound like it would fit on this label or play in that club, then you're already on a losing streak. If you believe in it, then just get it out in whatever form you can, put it online, make a 7-inch, make a cassette tape, whatever, just put it out and just keep going. I think that's the only way to do it.
Great question.
Yeah, I guess this is kind of, I'm going to multifaceted this, so you can both kind of answer it. But Daniel, do you feel like a pressure to play a certain way, or do you still feel like you can experiment? And I guess on the flip side of that, as the promoters, do you kind of want to encourage people to experiment in their sets, or kind of play in the way they might expect?
Well, that's the beauty of doing these all-night-long sets or longer extended sets, is that you can do that. You know, the 2 times I played for Jorge at Village Underground, playing all night, we made a conscious effort to make it feel like an arc to the night. So we hired in beanbags and put extra candles out and had projections on the wall. So the idea was that we were encouraging people to come in, sit down, lay on the floor whilst I was playing like drone and ambient music for a couple of hours. And then the same people are hopefully climbing the walls a few hours later. But to be able to draw a line between those things is important. So no, I don't feel any pressure to do it, but to be given that extra time and extra space as an artist is really my favorite thing, and I wish I could do it every gig. I really do.
I've had like different reactions from certain artists, and I've had like for all-nighter sets, like established artists. Some of them are really afraid of the opening part of and they get like, can we get an opener? And I'm like, well, no, it's an all-nighter. You have to start from 10 p.m., you know, and you have to dig into your record collection, and they probably they play lots of festivals, and they have a certain sort of like style or set. And some of them have come and had a great experience after it. Some of them have gone on really weird tangents. Like, for example, I had Tale of Us that were a couple of years, boxed into this sort of like certain sound, but a couple of years when they were a little bit less boxed, but still people expected those hits. They went a full techno set, and they were really enjoying it. And at some point they turned out like, fuck, we never get to play this. You know, we like this music. We expected to do this, but maybe in London we can do this. And they had a great experience. Rod had a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, he went on a completely meditating kind of like set, and he didn't play. It was just like really like haunting the whole thing, and I was absolutely loving it. And at some point I think he felt super self-conscious, and he turned around and he was like, is this okay? Because he's not playing his usual stuff. And I was like, it's amazing. Like the whole room wasn't going crazy, everyone was just completely haunted, and it's one of the best sets I've had at Village Underground. And I think sometimes when you give people like 8 hours to let loose, and I think you start losing yourself, and then you start not thinking, and then just going on weird tangents. And I think that's what the beauty is of the all-night sets, you know, that people can break into this, but artists do feel that they have to play a certain set for certain crowds, you know?
I mean, I'm sure you haven't, we've never at Fabric told an artist what to play or even dictate. We put the artist to be the artist. And it's actually Judy that said this to me. Our job is to make that artist feel as comfortable as possible, to allow them to be as relaxed to do what they want to do. And that stuck with me. And we've never even crossed our mind. I book the artist because we like what you do. We don't want you to waver what you do. And sadly, I've seen actually artists grow up and they were better before they started playing big rooms. When they play on the big room circuit, you start homogenizing your set for crowd pleasing. When you play the club circuit, remind yourself, go back to the club, go back to the small rooms. Remember what made you good. Remember what made you good was being individual and taking risks. And we're lucky with the places we go and the artists we work with that we're not in that mass market, let's get crowd pleasers all the time. We like it when people go off on tangents. But that's all I've got. Yeah,
but there is a pressure. I can feel from the artists there is a pressure to play certain stuff and sort of like please the crowd at some point, and they're boxed into this thing. So I've had conversations with artists that they love this certain type of music, but now they're boxed into playing this kind of thing. And I guess from the artists it might be like a catch-22. You're like victim of your own sort of like invention at some point, you know.
Expectations as well. Yeah.
Yes, being greedy. The first one, this is to Jorge and Andy. How do you balance considerations about carbon footprints when you're booking all these massive DJs from across the globe?
Well, actually, do you know what? I'm going to say something that we've learned. We've looked at water. We stopped doing plastic wristbands. We still got plastic water bottles. We have permanent plastic cups. But do you know what? We did this light bulb test. You know the biggest thing? We're not done it yet. Heineken have been working with us actually. It's our light bulbs. We're going to change all of our light bulbs. We're going to reduce our carbon footprint by 90%. And that is shocking. We all talk about plastic and everything like that, but the light bulbs is the biggest impact we can have. So we're going into all these like LED reducing things. And we were lucky that Heineken have been backing this and they've been funding the research for us. But that shocks me because we've been plastic. And it was actually just change your light bulbs and you're going to save 90%. But we're very conscious over it now. By no means are we perfect. By no means whatsoever. And will I accept an artist to fly on a private jet to come and play our party? If it makes the party happen, yeah. And I think that's the question we need to start speaking to ourselves about. But we are all hypocrites, but we are all trying.
Yeah, we also actually started that conversation about offsetting the carbon footprint, and it's not that expensive, but then it's a conversation on when we start having this conversation with agents on artists, you know, because at the end of the day, the venue can only contribute so much, and I think it has to be the venue, the artist, and the agency on equal percentages have to pay for their carbon footprint, you know. But that's going to become a standard. I give it less than a year that everyone's going to become more, that everyone, and maybe you can adopt it as a policy of the venue, you know, or maybe the agency has this policy or the artist has this policy, but I don't give it more than a year, then everyone's going to have to offset their carbon footprint somehow to a certain charity, depending on the charity. But we're speaking to a couple of charities that to see how can we offset it, you know.
Great. There was another question?
Yes, and this is for Andy specifically. So obviously Fabric's been around for so long. I guess, given that you've sort of been pushed into the position that you're in, how do you guys keep it fresh, basically?
Well, in what do you mean by
in terms of booking specifically?
the restrictions, or what are you talking about there?
So I guess like Fabric has almost like a certain reputation in terms of you have a certain number of people you need to bring in.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're at that awkward size actually, which is you're not the big show and you're not the small club. And this is what I say, we've had to evolve from. I think being a 52-week a year ethos is what we used to be, of just booking whatever we wanted and we got away with it. It changed, and I do think closure and reopening, and suddenly it was a perfect storm. Is the Printworks and Tobacco Docks started as soon as we were closed. We had that perfect blend, I think, of people who came 100% for music and those just clubbers around there. It's something we're still trying to work out, to be totally honest with you. I mean, what I would say, London's nightlife has become so erratic. You know, we've just had a great weekend with Ricardo and Resh and, you know, Seth and Detman. And, you know, I'm not going to lie, September was fucking horrible for us. You know, it's in between the summer, before we're about to see the birthdays. So London's become erratic. We probably causes a lot of arguments. We try and stick to our guns as much as possible. But you can't be as purist as we used to be, and I'll admit that. But I would say 50% of the nights are purist, and the others are quality, credible music, and you kind of have to meet that. You kind of have to take it ups and downs when you can get it. But it's 100% harder than it was 3-4 years ago. Trust me.
Great.
How we're gonna bring back the club culture without the headliners? You mean?
Yeah. So if you're saying you want to bring like the local talent,
Well, you still need a headliner at the end of the day, but you need to sort of like pick that headliner when it's coming up, you know, so you can see it bubbling like someone that's about to blow up, and then you can sort of like bet maybe this person's going to be 500 tickets, you know. I think.
Can I say something? Which is going back to social media, which I think is one of the negative sides of social media. Is if I went £5 in, £6,000 on talent, like no big names. How many customers will actually come is what scares me, because I had you have these conversations where perceived good night out, and unfortunately social media, not to the music lovers, but has dictated what people like a lot. So the bigger names have got bigger, and it's like a perceived good night out. If I'm going to spend £25, I'm going to go and see Seth because he's a safe bet. I'm not going to go and see Midland and Prosumer because that I haven't been told to like them. And I think social media has dictated people what they should like a lot more, and it has made our lives harder. I mean, we just used to put lineups on and they came, and now it is really
before the club used to dictate taste. So the club, if Fabric put something on, you better know what it is, and then you better make your research about it. You know, but I said for myself when I was back in Colombia and I was looking at Fabric's lineup, you know, especially drum and bass that I used to like. I used to see Fabric's lineup and check them out, and then, oh, who's this guy? I have no idea, and I'd go do some research, you know. So before the clubs used to dictate what was good and who was supposed to be on this bill at what level, you know. Now it's social media, boiler room, etc. You get a great boiler room, and then suddenly you have loads of people coming to your show. So we have to be aware of that. I think we're trying to focus a lot on like community people that have like a real community around them. So it's not one DJ, it's like 5 or 6 DJs that have this sort of crew, etc. And I think that's going to be a lot of the future, you know, for this sort of like underground club world, like real rave world. It's going to be like not one DJ, like 6 or 7 of them. One of them that was the visuals, and I think that has a lot of power and a lot of future. Eventually, one of those artists is going to become bigger than the rest, but I think that's where I would focus and look at right now.
Great. Any last question? One more, yes.
How do you feel about sort of industry gatekeepers? Because it seems like there's a handful of people who are sharing opinions, who might not be doing so much on the scene anymore, but they're still influencing it. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think people could call me and Jorge gatekeepers, and I could call somebody like people journalists gatekeepers that have actually never put on a party, but they're there to slag you off, but they've never invested any of their own time and money to do it. So, so yeah, there's different gatekeepers at times. I don't want to go into it. I mean,
gatekeepers could be labels, you know, like you suddenly are a big artist and you release them on their label. Let's say Drum Code, you know, and they release this artist. And
what I would say is, Daniel takes risks in his music. There's times when we've lost tens of thousands of pounds taking a chance on stuff, and I know Jorge's done the same. So what really grates me is when people say, yo, you're not supporting. Trust me, I've cried into my cornflakes as I paid everyone else their money and I'm staring at a loss. But yeah, I don't think you can escape the fact. I think whatever industry you're in, if you're even in the big movies, there's people that control what's going on. And I do think in London, in the club scene, we do try and bring new stuff through.
Especially now with the sort of like climate that you're always searching for new stuff. But at the end of the day, you have to be good so that the gatekeepers cannot ignore you, you know?
Well, I say the biggest gatekeepers, let's be honest, this is about finances. The industry 5 years ago was buoyant, and I would say we were all a bit flippant, that we would go, yeah, someone wants a bit more money, yeah, we're all making money. It's not there anymore. That now there's this trap between I've got to pay the bills, and that is bad. I think it's just not as healthy for the scene.
And you have to go traditional at that moment.
Yeah, but that's what I mean about reset. That's what I mean about reset. Is if everything came down, there's less risk to everyone, that we can be a bit more creative on things.
And also, yeah, you had artists that you would bank on, and you would be like, okay, if these artists, before they went to sort of like these massive shows, you were like, I got 6 or 7 days of these massive shows. We're going to make all this money. I can take risks, you know. Maybe I'll do a giggling, see how that works. It ended up going great, you know. But now it's like you're actually banking on your risks as well, you know. So it's harder to make all these risks. So you have to sort of like go safer and safer and safer and take less amount, and that diminishes the amount of like people that you can let in, you know.
Yeah.
But
Which I think is why your point about making your own crew is so important right now. When you're just starting, build your own crew. Make a party for your friends, 50 of your friends, 100 of your friends, and go from there. Then you're going to build a buzz. Don't worry about all this other stuff we've been talking about, really. That will come eventually. But in those early days, build your own team, build your own crew. And right now, that's more important than ever, I think.
Great. That was a very good end. So before we thank our guests, I want to thank the people that helped tonight. Lion and Lamb, who offered the venue, who is this venue, basically, and they do a lot of these amazing events. Thank you. And we also have Pirate Studios, who are a 24/7 studio rental company, and they are actually shooting the video, so you can see these guys here. Let's give them a round of applause. And then a few friends of us, Claire, who's been at the door helping us, Benas, who is taking pictures, Dorado, who's going to spin in some records after we finish here. Let's give them applause. And also Homo Sound, you can grab us if you want a shot after this. Thank you. Flaminia. Yes, and then we thank our guests. So Jorge doesn't like the applauses. Bianca, thanks for being here. It was last minute. Thank you for being here. Jorge, thank you. Andy, thank you. Last but not least, Daniel, thank you so much.